Hello, my name is Michael Guttilla, and I'm Multimatic's Vice President of Engineering. I'd like to thank VI Grade for inviting me to be a keynote speaker at the 2021 Zero Prototype Summit. I'd also like to thank all the attendees that are either remotely located or viewing live at any one of the facilities for your attention today. I'm here to discuss how driving simulators have impacted Multimatic's business. In order to understand the impact driving simulators have had on Multimatic's business, I think it would be helpful to understand what Multimatic does. Multimatic is a supplier of engineering services and a manufacturer of products that range from low-volume complete vehicles, like the Ford GT, all the way to high-volume components and subsystems for the global automotive industry, with sales approaching $2 billion annually. We like to say that we deliver innovation and technology at any scale. We have a saying that we go all the way from Formula One or F1 to F-150. So at the lower volume side of the business, we're delivering 4 vehicles annually of our solutions, all the way up to, at the F-150, 750,000 vehicles per year. And we are intentionally involved in that spectrum, starting at the low volume level, at the highest level of motorsports and niche vehicle development, in order to incubate our technology. The goal is to incubate the technology there and then to ultimately transition it into larger volume series production so that we can bring that benefit to the broadest market possible. So that's what we do and why we do it. Now I'd like to discuss a little bit about how we do it. Multimatic for over 20 years has been using a development process that we've internally called the Multimatic Integrated Systems Analysis process. We give it a name, we call it MISA for short, but quite essentially what it involves is taking vehicle-level attributes and being able to synthesize those down into a specific set of component requirements, all virtually using computer-aided engineering tools, and then being able to build and test and validate those components so that we can create a bridge between the subjective and the objective. This has been a very valuable tool that Multimatic has used for over 20 years in developing our products. The goal has always been for us to shorten the development cycle and to bring more advanced technology to market that satisfies those higher level vehicle attributes in a shorter period of time. And the MISA process has enabled that to happen very successfully. And we then started to dream one day about being able to close that gap entirely through the use of driving simulators by bringing subjective evaluation up front into that synthesis process. So effectively, by having a driving simulator in the loop of the MISA process, we're able to create what we refer to as a mini MISA. So in the category where we're synthesizing vehicle attributes, which is really ultimately what the customer cares about, into a set of component design specifications, we're not just producing objective data that we then can bridge to what we think the subjective impression is going to be of the final consumer who drives that vehicle. We're actually able to get the subjective evaluation in real time before we build a single prototype. That doesn't just bridge the gap, that eliminates the gap. This is why we call it short-circuiting the MISA process. Specifically, when we are at the beginning stages of laying out what vehicle-level attributes we're trying to enhance and how that relates to a subsystem or a component that Multimatic may manufacture, we're able to employ driving simulation in the loop where we're doing multiple iterations of subjective evaluation at the front end of the process, not at the tail end, in order to validate what we thought our front-end objective data was telling us. It gives us the voice of the customer right up front in the process and has really shortened the amount of development time that we can now bring products to market. Our previous MISA process we started 20 years ago was innovative and helped us have an industry-leading design and development procedure to bring products to market. But with the implementation of driving simulators starting in 2011, first in motorsports, but just like all products that we bring into low-volume applications and then bring up and scale to production vehicles, it wasn't long until 2012 that we helped develop our first road car vehicle that used Multimatic spool valve damping technology in the Camaro Z28. From then on, we've been refining the use of vehicle simulators both in motorsports and in road car applications, And to this day, we've grown into our latest installation that you can see behind me, the DIM 250 from VI Grade, which has enabled us to not just do one segment optimization at a time, but to expand the segment so that we can address all the way from large luxury sedans to off-road and on-road pickup trucks and SUVs. So with that understanding of how it's enhanced our product development process, I think it's also important to discuss how it really has helped us with our entire product deployment plan and how we strategize on bringing products to market. Effectively, we're more accurately able to plan what are increasingly complex vehicle systems up front that require integration with the customer's vehicle platforms and our technology partners. In any product technology plan that we develop, an understanding of its value proposition up front necessitates really understanding that attribute improvement or what that technology is going to do for the end user. Why is that important, and how much will the customer really appreciate that? We can estimate what it costs, but understanding what benefit it is achieving helps us really develop the value proposition. So it helps us answer two fundamental questions. What problem are we trying to solve? And what potential enhancement are we trying to make? With quantitative answers, not subjective answers, but quantitative answers based on the driver's impression or the consumer's impression up front. This all happens, again, before we build a single prototype vehicle. So when we're talking about a zero prototype summit, I think that directly addresses the importance of product deployment planning. Multimatic is in the problem-solving business, after all, so having a tool that allows us to quantify what problem we're solving or what enhancement we're bringing to the market before building a single prototype is really critical and has had a major impact on our business. To be a little bit more specific on a product that Multimatic started to bring to market back in 2012, as I mentioned previously, and continues to evolve and bring to market today, I'd like to just tell the story about how we've developed Multimatic spool valve dampers and what an integral role driving simulators have had in bringing that product to market. All throughout that development process, it's important to understand that the spool valve technology itself was invented by Multimatic in order to be an analytically determinate system. It's a set of hardware that enables us to build a product that is derived from using a driving simulator to determine what force, velocity, and damping characteristics the vehicle wants to have at the component to satisfy all of the handling and ride comfort metrics desired at the vehicle level, at the driver's level. And then because of this unique technology, we're able to take and precision machine spools in order to recreate those force velocity curves precisely. With the combination of the MISA and the driving simulator and the spool valve hardware analytically determinate capability, we're able, again, to bring these products to market in a very, very short period of time. What started off as a race technology with the ultimate goal of making it into road cars started in the passive world in Formula One and in IndyCar, as I mentioned, and then migrated into road car applications like the Camaro Z28 or the Ferrari SF90 Fiorano package. So we are now moving into new market segments all the time. We took that technology into the off-road world by going to position sensing damping. And now in our latest technology, we're bringing in electronics and controls as most systems are becoming adaptive and rolling out what we call the ASV, or the adaptive spool valve damping technology, built on the previous successes we've had in the passive application. With adaptive technology and with any electronic controlled suspension capability, it really becomes critical to address upfront all of the functional safety requirements of an electronically controlled system. And the integration of software and controls becomes extremely complex as well. So having the driving simulator not only to create that zero gap between subjective and objective parameters, but to allow for the system integration and software development and functional safety requirements, again, has really expanded its use and has shortened the amount of time it takes to bring these electronically controlled systems to market dramatically. As we migrate the Multimatic spool valve technology into the adaptive ASV product line, we now can develop that process using driving in the loop with our experts who ultimately have to do the hardware, physical hardware development and optimization in the field. So to that end, I'd like to introduce our technical director and head of vehicle development, Murray White, who can speak to how using the driving simulator and being in the DIM in particular has helped him when he gets to the field with a physical prototype and optimizing the system.
Hi, I'm Murray White, Technical Director of Vehicle Development at Multimatic. We've been using simulators for our vehicle dynamics development here for quite some time, but it's really coming along fast. So we got to the point where we've actually been able to very successfully develop our adaptive spool valve damping algorithms, the ASV control algorithms, on using a combination of offline simulation and then running various trials in the DIM to see how the different algorithms actually perform on the vehicle and what they feel like and how we can adjust the calibrations and how successful we can be with a certain algorithm with calibration adjustments, and if we really can't get what we're looking for, we go back and readjust the algorithm. Until on the DIM, we had what we thought was a pretty good solution, and then went ahead and put it in an actual vehicle and were very pleasantly surprised about how good the correlation was, seeing it was the first time we'd really tried a serious ride development exercise on the DIM. So that was a really big eye-opener for me, certainly, and the company in general, as to how much work you can successfully do ahead of any prototypes being available in terms of screening things like adaptive system algorithm development. It really cut down the time it took us to the point where, first time we put our ASV shocks on a car with the DIM developed algorithms and the DIM developed valving in the dampers, the car was really good. It's obviously not perfect and took some tuning to get it where it needed to be, but we were starting from a much better place than we'd ever have got to with just traditional offline simulation or taking a swag where it should have been based on experience.
So when thinking through specifically the elevation that the DIM 250 over what our previous driving simulation capability has done for us, I think it's important to understand what we're seeing as an automotive industry trend in general. There's a big movement towards something we call segment blending. And in segment blending, we're starting to see supercars that break records at the Nürburgring delivering unprecedented levels of ride comfort and luxury that was previously associated with completely different segments of vehicles. Larger luxury vehicles and SUVs are now expected to handle with the same level of agility and capability previously reserved for some of the finest GT cars and sports cars. And you're hearing terms now like super truck, which are pickup trucks with an off-road performance of a desert race truck and the on-road performance of a supercar. So in order to create simultaneously products that enable this segment blending to occur, we have to eliminate what was previously believed to be non-negotiable compromises between these different segments of vehicles. And the ability to just do single segment focused development, that's a process that really is a process of yesteryear. In order to really continue to innovate and bring that segment blending capability to market, again, the frequency capability and the travel capacity of the DIM is absolutely critical. For us, it's step number one to creating what is our ultimate objective in our products, which is performance without compromise. So, what does all of this mean? What impact have driving simulators had on Multimatic's purpose, which is to bring innovative, differentiated products to the market for our customers? In preparing for this discussion, we thought about some metrics that we often use for looking at the efficacy of our vehicle development process. And one simple metric is how many valve code changes are necessary in a product like our spool valve dampers in order to go from the first physical prototype to the final release design. And we've proven that through the use of the MISA, and in particular incorporating the driving simulator into the MISA process, that we've ended up with 8 times fewer valve code changes once we get to a physical prototype to bring that product to market. That translates into being able to get to that end of the development process in 25% of the time that it would normally take without the usage of these tools up front. And as we've migrated into the adaptive systems, where we're integrating vehicle dynamics, electronic controls, and software algorithms, we've been able to do more in 12 months on 3 different market segments of vehicles, including luxury sedans, sports cars, and pickup trucks and SUVs specifically, than we would have been able to do in 3 years' time. The clock speed of innovation in the automotive industry is getting faster. The vehicle development and complexity is increasing dramatically. And in order for Multimatic to stay innovative and continue to deliver our value propositions on 50% of our business, which is driving dynamics adjacent, the DIM is absolutely essential. Again, I'd like to thank VI Grade for inviting me to be a keynote speaker at today's conference. And I want to thank all of you for your attention. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.